Hello, everyone, and welcome back to She Seeks Justice. I'm LaDonna Humphrey. A few days ago, I told the story of Isabelle Sam. I talked about her life, her struggles, and the circumstances that led to her death in January of 2023. And today, I'm going to do something different. Today, I'm going to open the files. I'm not going to talk about rumors or speculation on social media. I'm not going to discuss conversations that happen after dark on Facebook. Today, I'm going to talk about the actual records, the police reports, the forensic nursing examination, the autopsy findings, and the documents that are supposed to explain what happened during Isabelle Sam's final hours. And after reading them, I was left with a feeling that I suspect many of you will share. I don't have closure or confidence, and I certainly don't have peace. Instead, what I find is a file that answers one question while leaving an entire collection of others behind. The official conclusion is simple. Isabelle Sam died from a combination of fentanyl and alcohol. The manner of death was ruled accidental. And for authorities, that is case closed, file completed, just another vulnerable woman that passed away. It's another tragedy that was reduced to a toxicology report. But when you actually read the reports, the situation becomes far more disturbing than a single sentence on a death certificate. The records tell me that Isabelle was discovered in the backseat of an abandoned SUV parked near businesses in Juneau, Alaska. The vehicle was littered with trash. The tires were flat. The passenger side window was partially open. This was not a safe environment. It was not a home, and it was not a place where someone should have been spending their final hours. Yet this is where Isabelle was ultimately found deceased. What becomes immediately apparent is that Isabelle was not alone before she died. There were people with her. Those people were drinking and using drugs. People were watching events unfold. And these same people later sat down with investigators and attempted to explain what happened. And that's where this story begins to unravel. Because throughout the reports, timelines shift, accounts vary, critical moments become blurry. And though investigators repeatedly attempted to determine when Isabelle was last responsive, when she became unconscious, and when those around her recognized that something was seriously wrong, they didn't ever really solve that puzzle, because those questions appear again and again and again. And they keep appearing because those questions matter. They matter because every minute counts when fentanyl is involved. They matter because intervention saves lives. And those questions matter because the difference between life and death can be measured in seconds. And one of the most uncomfortable realities in this case is that Isabelle did not vanish into the wilderness. She did not disappear alone. She did not die where no one could find her. She died while other people were present. And somehow, despite all of that, she still ended up in the backseat of an abandoned vehicle with no assistance. And that fact should make every one of us uncomfortable. The records also document horrendous injuries, bruising all over her body, abrasions. There were injuries to her face, injuries to her arms, injuries to other areas of her body, and the autopsy ultimately concluded that those injuries were not the cause of death. But their existence still remains part of the story. A healthy society should not look at a woman found dead with documented injuries and simply shrug its shoulders. A healthy society should demand answers, and how those injuries occurred and what role they may have played in the events leading up to her death. And then there is an issue that I find most troubling. The condition in which Isabelle was found was serious enough that a forensic sexual assault examination was ordered. I want you to think about that for a moment. Investigators did not look at this as a scene and immediately conclude that there was nothing to examine. They recognized circumstances that warranted additional scrutiny. They recognized circumstances that demanded questions that needed answers, and they recognized circumstances that needed documentation. And yet, when all of that was said and done, the case ultimately landed in a place that often frustrates families and advocates alike. The official findings addressed the forensic questions, the reports were completed, and the cause of death was certified. The file moved forward. But accountability? That is much harder to find in this case, because when you strip away the legal language and the medical terminology, what remains is a woman who is dead and a series of human decisions that occurred before she died. Someone supplied her that fentanyl. Someone watched a vulnerable woman become increasingly impaired. Someone did recognize that she was no longer functioning normally, and someone left her in that vehicle. And more disturbingly, according to reports, someone did sexually assault her before and after death. Those are crimes. Those are not natural disasters. Those are not unavoidable acts of fate. They are human decisions. And while the criminal justice system may not always assign legal responsibility to those decisions, that does not make them any less real. And one of the things that bothers me most about cases like Isabelle's is the way the word accidental can sometimes become a shield. The moment that classification appears, public curiosity often disappears. The discussion ends, people move on, and the assumption becomes that nothing more needs to be examined. But accidental deaths can still expose failures. They can expose negligence, they can expose indifference, they can expose the devastating consequences of addiction, exploitation, and apathy. Most importantly, they can reveal how easily vulnerable people become disposable in the eyes of society. And as I reviewed these records, I kept coming back to one question. At what point did everyone around Isabelle stop seeing a human being and start seeing a problem? Because Isabelle was not born to become an autopsy report. She was not born to become a police file. She was not born to die in the back of an abandoned SUV while the people around her struggled to explain what happened. And she was not born to be sexually assaulted after her death. Somewhere along the way, systems failed her, and the result was a woman whose life ended in circumstances that remained deeply unsettling even after reading every page of the official record. The file may be closed, but perhaps it needs to be reopened. I understand toxicology reports can be final, and a matter of death can be certified, but that does not mean the moral questions have been answered. It does not mean accountability has been achieved, and it certainly does not mean that Isabelle Sam should be forgotten, because behind every report, every evidence log, and every interview transcript, and every autopsy finding is a human being whose life mattered. And Isabelle Sam mattered. I'm LaDonna Humphrey, and this has been She Seeks Justice. Until next time when I come back with part 3 about Isabelle Sam, please keep asking hard questions, keep seeking truth, and never allow a case file to become more important than the person whose name is written on the front of it.